High school, college, and real knowledge. During my first and last internship, a brainless CEO walked up to me and asked, "Who do you want to be? What do you want to do?" While I still had difficulty speaking, I could have answered, but instead I mumbled something about cutting paper. The woman in control of the internship program suspected that I knew perfect English, and me not communicating back with the CEO was all the evidence she needed. Halfway through high school, a strange award ceremony appeared out of nowhere. Kids sitting next to me laughed that he got an award. It was nice, but dishonest. And, as you can guess, I was one of the few people that did not get the stupid award. Sometime before the ceremony, I brainlessly read some Shakespeare, which I later dismissed as it was not a good way to learn English. And I'm with Mr. Vonnegut and the quality of Shakespeare's stories. I think he was capable of more. Even before that, I was asked to give my opinion on new teacher hires. I used the residual dictionary from the ongoing conversations in the room. Even I noticed how well I worded myself, but in her eyes, this did me no favors. I was right about the new teacher not being a good fit, but deep down I wished her all the luck. So the teacher wasn't aware of residual dictionaries and relative ease of communicating within a preset context, and I was going to be taught a lesson by not receiving a fake award for fake progress. Fantastic. That was just what I needed. My scrambled reply to the CEO was rooted in the way he treated me. The truth is, he didn't deserve a response. I was already familiar with DOS, GOS, macOS, Windows 3, and even maybe Windows 95, and could program a couple of flavors of BASIC. Instead, I was told not to enter the software library room, and my knowledge of computers was ignored. With a tiny bit of help, I could have learned HyperCard and HyperTalk in a week flat. I could have learned image editing very quickly too. Instead, my computer skills were used to copy a phone book from paper to macOS. It was awful, and it was boring, and it was making me fall asleep. And I felt forced to remain silent, as I could have gotten kicked off the internship if I didn't do something right. Students were forced to participate in the internship for a grade. Then I get to clean the printers and clean dust off of shelves. The CEO approached me as I was cutting paper to size. The question of what do you want to be later in life seemed genuine, but during an unpaid internship, the first thing that a CEO has to do is pay the interns at least minimum wage. And minimum wage would not impress me. I'd see it as a mere formality. He had several free workers and acted like he was doing us a favor. We were forced to be there to get a passing grade, and he was getting free labor. And those who kissed his ass were promised a job, though the company did not have any paid high school kids as employees. That promise might have been tied to graduating high school. This was not a new company, and companies like that last maybe 10 years on average. There was an enormous gap between what a high school student knew about computers and what was needed to be useful at an advertising agency. I remember trying to explain to one of the smartest and classiest students that she needs to close the shape she drew on the screen before using the fill tool. This is the only time that a person looked at me with disgust. And she also convinced her friend to look at me with disgust too. And I myself remember being surprised that the bucket always filled my entire screen. This was some years back on a Commodore 64, and I quickly figured it out. I told the internship program manager that I'm cleaning office and I need to transfer out of the internship program. I ended up tidying things up in the high school office, but there was nothing meaningful to learn there. Even if there was a HyperCard and modern graphic design class without prerequisites, all that would represent in high school is a threat to the GPA. The message is simple. No graduation, no job. And any advanced classes pose a threat to graduation, especially for someone who is still learning English. The safe route is to learn at home, eliminating all the risks, and then take the class. But there is no time for that. For a small number of subjects, this could be reasonable. But in my context, the price of the Apple computer and the necessary software was out of this world. I had a Pentium 90 a little bit later with a $360 gigabyte hard drive. But I needed an Apple. 2 computers, that was just not possible. A lot of good ideas only turn out to be just 10% or less of the whole. The teachers were 10%, the award ceremonies were 10%, the internship was 10%. And everyone involved gets away with it. They get away with not doing 90% of their job. They only do enough to look like they are working. The award ceremonies and graduations are basically fake. Then it turned out that my GPA didn't even matter. I dropped out of high school, as when the teacher says that weed is an herb, you get up and leave. That kind of thing is only the tip of the iceberg, and unfortunately, I was right. Later, I get grabbed to get a diploma from adult ed, graduating 6 months early with extra credits, but at this point I felt that the principals knew that failing to get a diploma from their dog and pony shows actually ruins lives for real. And, it actually felt like it was less pretending and more learning, but one would expect that from adult ed. This is not how schools are meant to work. In fact, they appear to be interfering with real education. Because you can't learn for real in your own way, in your own sequence, at your own pace. You have to do cookie-cutter textbook stuff, which is just one of a dozen, if not 100, ways of learning. And the truth comes out when it comes to programming languages. As real results are required, you need to be able to write a program. When learning math on paper, it's all abstract, and any Joe Slick can just pretend to teach it by following a lecture program. So I needed to be learning HyperCard in a class that does not threaten my diploma, and later free classes where I could learn more about programming. The local college was charging me $500 for a simple Visual Basic class where I already figured everything out on my own, and there was no Visual Basic 2 class. I remember the teacher looking at me to see if some of the things he said were correct. He learned from a book. He might not have been writing any programs at all. He was just giving a presentation. And any of the programs that he might have written were probably just meant for the class itself. They were just practice programs. I also learned Java before taking Java, which took me some 20 hours coming from ActionScript. It was not a big challenge. And I got a 99 on the final because the test was actually actively trying to trick the students. Being focused on perfect scores, I messed up on one mangled, obscure question. So it's almost like getting 100 is not quite possible because the test is trying to push you left and right. We have no choice but to learn on our own. The schools are not quite interested in actually teaching us. The GPA must never get in the way of real education, and that can only mean self-education. The schools work in such a way that it is better to learn first and then take the classes for a diploma. And by learning, I don't mean reviewing the textbooks that the Java class uses, for example. I mean mastering the programming language on your own. Rating some programs, publishing a couple of Android apps to really soak up the language, and then taking the class and using real knowledge to overpower the nonsense of the class, the way the textbook is written, the way the lectures are conducted, and the way the tests are trying to trick you. I suspect that in many situations that means asking if organized education is worth the trouble and the debt. If the alternative of becoming an entrepreneur and continuing to self-educate with multiple little projects and startups is not the wiser choice. Real education is absolutely the most important thing in the world. Without it, we will be making decisions based on wrong information that is not compatible with who we will become in the future. I think the urgency of coherent, powerful self-education is such that the question of organized education is more about entertainment. Isn't that what a dog and pony show is?